Hey, my name is Christopher Gregory-Rivera, and I'm a Puerto Rican photographer. I'll be sharing with you my book El Gobierno de Odia, which is a book published in its second edition last year. And the title El Gobierno de Odia roughly translates into The Government Hates You. So basically, a little bit of history. Puerto Rico is a colony of the United States. They were won in the Spanish-American War as spoils of war after defeating the Spanish in 1898. And since then, they've been occupied and a little bit of a political flashpoint in the Caribbean because of its political history. And so from the 1940s until late 1980s, there was a secret police tasked with surveilling, intimidating, and in some cases murdering political activists on the island. Very similar to the Stasi, which is a famous unit out of East Germany. But what I think is very different in the context of Puerto Rico is that they were trained, supported, and aided by the FBI and the CIA. And what is also special about this program is that the archive, all of the surveillance material that was collected that belonged to somebody, that was about a particular individual, at the end, when this was unveiled, the courts decided that that was the property of the person that was watched. And so people would get giant files documenting 30 years of their lives. And through reading it, they found out that neighbors, friends, and in some cases family members had actually been spying on them for money or under coercion or collaborating with the police. And so in 2013, I set out to photograph these files and to photograph the people who were watched. Because at the time, after the Edward Snowden revelations in the United States, I think there was a broader conversation around the world about the dangers of surveillance and what that actually meant. And I thought that this surveillance project in Puerto Rico and its archives was a great opportunity to create an atlas for societies that might be under threat or might be under heavy surveillance. In Puerto Rico, when it was all said and done, 150,000 people were surveilled, of which about 15 to 16,000 people had extensive files. And everything that wasn't picked up during this declassification process in the late 80s, early 90s, was deposited in the National Archives and put under seal. And a year after I started the project, in 2015, they were unsealed, and I was one of the first investigators led into to the National Archives of Puerto Rico to deal with this archive. This program, even though it was massive in Puerto Rico, isn't really well known. A lot of people sort of are familiar with it, but don't really understand that this was a massive coordinated effort by the government. And so in a lot of ways, the archive is sort of forbidden and really a receipt of the criminalization of political speech. And so in 2015, I went into the archives and was investigating with the primary documents and actually found a trove of 40,000 images, which was the photographic archive of the secret police. And so my project basically has two main series, of which one are still lives of the objects themselves, sort of rephotographing, monumentalizing these surveillance documents. And then the other is really an act of sort of guerrilla archivism and sort of a reimagination of Puerto Rican history through the digitization and preservation of the Puerto Rican Intelligence Division, the Secret Police's photographic archive. And so my book is basically made up of all of these surveillance images that I digitized, well, not all of them, a selection of them, paired with a surveillance manual that was given to officers on how to surveil, essentially. And so the text is literally the text as like transcribed verbatim, giving instructions to police officers on how to surveil and how to sort of think about surveillance. And so the book is comprised of what you would think of as sort of classic surveillance images, where you could see police sequences, essentially, sort of surveillance sequences of people going about their lives and meeting and speaking. A lot of protests where you can see people exercising their right to free speech. And a lot of these sort of led me to really think about the gaze, right? And so the camera being used as a weapon in this case sort of led me to come up with this idea that if the state's gaze is violent, right? I think people's counter gaze is the resistance to that violence. The book is really sort of an archival and sort of a sequencing effort that gets into my own doubts about the camera, about the gaze, of its sort of colonial history and its application in colonial contexts. The book itself is handmade on a risograph machine. And so the photographs are hand printed by me and then hand collated and then hand mounted, how it's screwed or bound with these screw posts. It's meant to sort of resemble the archive itself. It's packaged in this folder. And to me, this project in its book form is really meant to be an atlas for people to think about surveillance and to understand it, and to understand the state's gaze, in an effort to put forward that if we understand the state's gaze, we can come to deconstruct the control that it has over us today. And in many ways, I think in Puerto Rico, there still is very much, I think Puerto Ricans and Puerto Rican society is very much still being held down by a lot of the ideas of civic duty, civic participation, and political ideology that was created by this program and during this time. Certainly, a process of free self-determination wasn't possible, and I think this program and the photographs and the archives that my project collects are a testament to that. In the end, I think of this project as an atlas, and I think that by literally hand photocopying and distributing these files that were never really meant to be seen and in a large way represent sort of a secret history in Puerto Rico, I'm aiming to create an atlas and to really create a guide for us to think about the idea that surveillance itself and the information that's collected isn't necessarily the problem. For example, this program was illegal and couldn't be admitted in court. But rather, the real issue with surveillance is the fact that we feel watched, and what chilling effect and what effect that has on civic society. And so I encourage people to check it out and sit with it and sort of reflect beyond the context of Puerto Rico what files like this, which exist around the world undoubtedly, but we just haven't seen, mean and represent for a healthy sort of civic discourse in whatever society we live in. So yeah, thanks a lot.